Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. The political system in US is convulsed with controversies, and the latest controversy to erupt is a pardon of so-called war criminals by President Trump. He not only pardoned a Navy SEAL for shooting down some people in Afghanistan, but he also promoted him. Not only that, the Navy Secretary was made to go because he could not implement the promotion order given by the President of Pentagon. Now, war crimes are a recent phenomenon insofar as that till Second World War, nobody talked of war crimes. And even in the Second World War, the Germans, when the Nuremberg trial started, said that it's only the winning side which does not commit a war crime. As for the losing side is concerned, they are always criminals. And that's true to a great extent. But before I take up the question of war crimes, let's see whether what President Trump is some exception to the rule. Have the war criminals who are branded as war criminals not been pardoned before? If you remember, in the times of Vietnam, there was a massacre of the civilians, non-combatants. Now here's the difference. These Navy SEALs and the people whom Trump forgave were accused of killing combatants. But at that time, in My Lai, the village in Vietnam, it was the innocent people who were mowed down the way General Dyer had killed innocent people in Jallianwala Bagh. And Jallianwala Bagh, after that happened, General Dyer received knighthood and he was promoted and lauded with the parliament. When Lieutenant Kelly was punished, what did Nixon do? He forgave him. And they tell me the dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, were those pilots and the bombers ever punished? We had Nuremberg trials where we hanged people for war crimes. But was that killing of the innocent Japanese who had no concern with the war, who were not fighting old, young children? They were simply annihilated in the twinkle of an eye. Was President Truman tried as a war criminal? Because he gave the order. And in Nuremberg, the Allies hanged people. Those people who had obeyed the orders from the lawful authority. You may not accept the relevance of those orders, but the German army had to obey the order of their commanders, and yet they were punished. Here, neither the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, the Commander-in-Chief of USA, General President Truman, neither was he punished, nor were the bombers punished. Was that not a war crime? So war crime is different. And then people who were killing innocent people, they were forgiven as Lieutenant Kelly was. So what was wrong in Trump forgiving and promoting the Navy SEAL? Now we come to the second part. What are war crimes? War itself is a crime against humanity. Can anybody show me a single war since the world started where the innocent, the depressed, the deprived, the have-nots have not been punished? We today talk of the mercenary armies and the paid armies. Even the paid army officers, are they not mercenaries? Would they be working of their own free will? Would they be volunteers? They are volunteers because they have a job to do. So they are mercenary in the any sense. But anyway, there's a different question. My point is that when you go in for a war, it's a question of your life or your enemy's life. Would you fight a war with the hands tied behind your back? That's not done. The old adage, everything is fair in love and war, holds true today even. When you're fighting to win. It's not a game. This is a game where the lives of the individuals and the honor of the nations are at stake. So to consider that the person shot some people is absolutely incomprehensible. Now look at the situation. You are fighting a war with an enemy who is not identifiable. And how do you know that that guy is not going to throw a gun at you, a bomb at you, or a grenade at you? You see some people is moving suspiciously, then actually you shoot at them because you have got a right to preserve yourself. Self-preservation is permitted. If you kill somebody in self-defense, even that has an extenuating circumstance and you cannot be punished. Here you know you are in war. Here you know your life is at stake. But this is a travesty of the system here, that even the criminals who were convicted of murder are rewarded the way Omar Khader was done. He got $10.5 million, which he would have never earned had he been honest. Would it not have been justified? I'm talking from the point of view of those families whose fathers and husbands and the bread earners were killed by Omar Khader's grenades. Would they not have been justified in killing Khader instead of arresting him? And in old days, if you remember, they never took prisoners of war. They would take prisoners only to use them as slaves. Otherwise, they will kill the prisoners for simple reason. General Volnov says that you carry the prisoners and there are two disadvantages. One, they eat your rations. An army marches on its stomach. Hungry soldiers cannot fight. So when your enemy is eating your ration, A, is depriving your soldiers of the food. B, it is demoralizing them. And then they delay the march. Would you be concerned in keeping your prisoner safe so that he might not escape, or he might not again start killing you? Or would you be fighting the war? The soldiers are divided at that time. And that's a tragedy. War is never acceptable. And to say that you have got to have an honorable code of conduct is fine to talk about. But when your life is at stake, you would not hesitate to do anything to live. How many people are there in the world who would say, okay, I would be fair. If he strikes me, I'll strike him. And let's see who wins. But I'll wait for him to charge first. When you are face to face with unscrupulous enemy, because guerrilla warfare, the war which was happening with ISIS or happening in Afghanistan, you don't know when your enemy is going to strike. Same was in Vietnam. It was guerrilla warfare. From where the attack would come, who would kill you, you would never know it. So it was fully justified to kill them so that you escape. And I'm not blaming Nixon that he pardoned General Lieutenant Kelly. No, he was justified in doing so. As a matter of fact, the situation being what it is, these are not crimes. Now let's look at it. War is never a normal situation. There's a tremendous physical and psychological pressure on the soldiers who are fighting. I've been on the front. I've seen soldiers fighting. We persuade them, we quote them, go for the honor of the country, go for the human rights, go for this, go for that. And when they go, they are worried about themselves, worried about their country, worried about their families, worried about their civilization, because they've been taught that civilization depends on you. And if they happen to kill somebody who later on turns out to be the person was innocent, they are punished. We forget the circumstances in which the war takes place. The civilians sitting back home cannot understand the tension and the problem and the pressure that they are facing. It's bursting, and a superhuman effort is required. And there's always a fear of the fact that the enemy is there. How do you identify that the enemy is going to attack you or not? It's not necessary today that he should be having .303 rifle with you. He can have a small hand grenade which he can just throw at you. In this case, they are suicide bombers. They won't hesitate to kill themselves to kill you. So should you wait till he explodes his vest and then you go to the other world? But then you've got to weigh whether you are committing a war crime or whether you are protecting yourself, your country, your civilization, democracy, and all that talk that we do, the persuasive talk, the talk to promote them, to excite them, to keep them involved. The real criminals are not the soldiers, even if for the sake of argument, even if I accept that the war crimes are there and they should be punished. But who is the real criminal? Not the soldier. In case of Iraq, I'll call the real criminal to be President Bush. He had no business interfering. As a matter of fact, he's an interloper and trespasser into the territory of Iraq. In Vietnam, who was responsible? Not Nixon, because the war was before him, but Truman. He had no business. Korean War, who was responsible? UN itself. If two people are fighting and you go in there to include so that the China or the Russia doesn't win, it is you who have escalated the war. So you are the war criminal. As a matter of fact, if the war crimes have to be punished, let's see who has given the order, not who has executed it. Soldier is just your projection of your arm, projection of your ideas. He is taking some steps as directed by you, yes. At times he will take steps to protect himself and is justified in doing so. But to call him a war criminal and to punish him is adding insult to the injury. No soldier ever is a war criminal. Let's be very clear about that. They have been trained to kill. And coupled with that, they have a right to defend themselves. And in an extraordinary situation that takes place, if they do something wrong, we have got to consider it with compassion. But these double-faced politicians, what they do? They ensure that the war takes place. And then they blame the soldiers if something untoward happens. This is the height of duplicity and hypocrisy. The human rights organizations, do they condemn the soldiers in the field? Do they condemn the politicians who directed that these soldiers go there? No. So what President Trump did is not something exceptional. It has been done many times before. Bush did it, especially when he ordered that the torture should be accepted as a form of persuasion so that the people tell the truth. That was President Bush's order. Nixon did it. Truman has done it. Roosevelt did it. Abraham Lincoln did it. The soldier who had deserted and he was ordered to be shot, he said no. So if all of them could do it and it was justified, how does it matter if Trump does it is unjustified? Wow. What a duplicity. And otherwise, looking at it dispassionately, objectively, the fault is with the people who initiate, promote, instigate, and order. If a soldier is given an order to go and fight, if he doesn't fight, he's a deserter and he is a coward. And if he fights and to protect himself, he kills somebody, he's a war criminal. What a conundrum for them. And this is what has to be avoided. We have got to protect our soldiers who are fighting for us. We have to protect our soldiers who fight because we tell them to fight. And they fight to save us, to safeguard us, to safeguard our institutions, our principles. Right or wrong, I'm not going into that. But they are not guilty of anything. They are only guilty of being good soldiers. And that is to be lauded and praised, not punished. War crimes, the concept itself, is an abomination. Because first we have to identify that is the person responsible, fix the responsibility, the accountability, and that will invariably come on the politicians and not the soldiers. If the war crime trials are to be there, try the politicians, not the soldiers. Thank you.